One of the consultants I was talking to uh, told me that they had three other candidates with the exact same name. One of them worked in the same industry. So conforming to a template would not help with the HBS application, as how I approached my application. I was looking at opportunities in the logistics industry, and Walmart happens to be one of the biggest shippers in the US. And therefore, their internal logistics operation is enormous. They have a well built out technology stack. They're also an e-commerce company, and that's where I decided to take a chance and found a fit during the interview.
This session is for people, number one, who aspire to study at IVB schools like Harvard. Number two, who aspires to work abroad for companies like Walmart, Strategy and Crediverso. And number three, who want to know what global product managers do and draw a difference between the product management role in India versus the USA. So for this, I have with me Mr. Anshul Agarwal, who is going to tell us about his career journey from DPS to BITS Pilani to Harvard, from Shell to Strategy and to Walmart, from India to Malaysia to the USA, and all this journey with a common thread, that is product management. Thanks for joining us today, Anshul.
Of course.
One can't understand a journey until and unless one knows where the person is coming from. So, can you help us understand what kind of a kid you were and what drove you towards engineering from BITS Pilani?
I think I can now say with pride that I was a complete nerd as a kid. I spent my childhood devouring encyclopedias, just watching Discovery Channel, taking apart and reassembling items in the house. I developed a huge interest in applied engineering because of whatever I used to do. And that kind of drove my decision to pursue engineering majors. And this also extended through BITS. I spent a lot of time there with teams working on creating different types of vehicles, and still stays with me today as a product manager.
After your BITS Pilani from 2015 to 2020, you worked at Shell, where you progressed from an engineer and in Bangalore to a product manager in Malaysia. So I want to just understand this 5 years or 4 years, around 4 to 5 years of your journey from engineer to product manager.
The 4 years that I had with Shell were super rewarding. And across three different roles, I had the opportunity to gain immense growth, both personally and professionally. One, by coming into contact with a large number of smart people that I could work with, and two, getting a push that came with every new role because it was a new industry, a new challenge to deal with.
So, if you are going to Shell, just walking in as an engineer, your first day. So, what is the work that you're doing versus when
Mhm.
you are going to Shell as a product manager now? So, your roles have changed a lot from a bit specific to a more general role. So, how was that change in your role? Maybe just get a glimpse of, a day as an engineer, a day as a product manager at Shell.
I'll say this with a caveat that each role was very unique because of the point of time they happened at, as part of the stage of maturity every organization was at that time. So as an engineer, I was kind of an engineering manager where I used to liaise with engineers that worked at Shell stations to maintain all the high risk petroleum equipment there, which meant site visits, making sure safety standards were adhered to, making sure we were getting maximum life out of the equipment that was deployed at every site. And this was like actual on the ground engineering. Um, Now, as a product manager, my role revolves more around understanding what customers might want, translating that into what do I need to build to address those wants, and then working with engineering so that they're able to get requirements to build those modules out. Sometimes it also consists of a lot of customer discovery. So to some extent, both roles are similar. Now it's more about being customer centric rather than focusing on how do I save costs.
After this, in 2020, you went over to join Harvard Business School. You were already into a management role. So just want to understand, why did you even go for MBA since you were already a product manager?
I mentioned earlier that every role was very unique to the stage of the organization I was at. And my product manager role in Shell was with an organization that was trying to go digital, which meant I was responsible for the P&L apart from the product side of things, which came with a huge amount of leadership exposure because I was responsible to prove the business case and deliver a new revenue stream. And while talking to all these senior leadership folks, I had to wear multiple hats. I was doing finance, I was doing sales, I was doing marketing, and I realized I was missing a solid understanding of how an organization functions. And I realized a formal education would probably help me overcome that gap, which is when I made a decision to do an MBA.
Most of us are imagining an Indian going to Harvard. So that's a big thing for everyone in India. So can you just narrate your story of your preparation to go to Harvard, and then maybe after that, the rounds of interviews that you went through?
The decision to apply to Harvard came in
Yeah.
much later than the decision to go for an MBA. And once I made a decision to do an MBA, I first got GMAT out of the way. It's just something you have to do. That was 2 months of prep. Once I got my result, realized that it was good enough to apply to some of the best business schools. That was followed by a relatively longer exploration period of what schools would be a good fit. I think that's the most important part of the MBA application journey, figuring out where you should go based on your goals and needs. And at that time, I wanted to get into venture capital. As part of my job, I was working with a VC partner who recommended HPS as a great place to go, not only because of the VC network there, but also because it's a recognized brand name back in Southeast Asia. And that's where I wanted to go back to work at that time. And that's what drove my decision to apply to HPS. Apart from the GMAT, I think there were 2 rounds. The first was an application submission, and the second was an on site interview. Both needed a fair amount of preparation, I would say, around a month or two each. And of course, they're very high stakes. I was sweating bullets in every round. For HPS, there are always admissions directors who fly down. I remember my interview was in Taj Lands in Mumbai. So I flew down from KL to Mumbai for the interview. In terms of questions, I think HPS had a very open-ended application question. You could write about whatever you wanted to write about. And I used that to bring out parts of my profile that would not reflect on my resume. And the interview is very specific to every applicant. So it went into my experiences and my motivations for certain things and my goals and what I wanted out of the HBS experience.
What is your perception about what was HBS exactly looking for in people or candidates?
I strongly feel HBS looks for two things. HBS says that they want to educate leaders to make a difference. And I found that statement to be very true at HBS. It means two things. One, they educate you to be a leader that can make a difference, but they also look for people who are leaders to start with. So you need to have demonstrated that potential and passion for being a leader and to make a difference. The second thing I think is really came across to the process is they look for a candidate's authentic self. And if that shines through the application, I think that helps you create a unique story. And here's where being an Indian comes in. One of the consultants I was talking to told me that they had 3 other candidates with the exact same name. One of them worked in the same industry. So conforming to a template would not help with the HBS application as how I approached my application.
The thing is, in India, all of us are very scared that can we go and do an MBA from Harvard Business School in terms of, first, though, it's money. Like, how much is the fees? Can we afford that? Are there any scholarships? How is the visa process? And will they accept us? How is the diversity around there? So, can you just help all the Indians out here that is it easy to get into Harvard Business School?
It's always relative to where you're coming from. Privilege is real. If you're born into that privilege, you would have had experiences that make you stand out. If you haven't been born into that privilege, like a lot of us, you need to work your way up to go out of your way to demonstrate some of the qualities and gain some of the experiences that would make you stand out as a candidate. In my case, I was fortunate to have had those experiences that made the cut in this case. In terms of diversity, HBS has a very, very strong nation, race, and background-based diversity. I think in terms of finances, there is no challenge that I could see at all. HBS and Stanford both have a very, very generous financial aid package, very generous donors. People can get in with the entire cost of living sponsored through a combination of financial aid and loans, which again are available through these schools. So money is not a challenge at all. And in terms of the visa application process, the year I joined was when COVID hit. The top 10 schools had faster application processing compared to the others. Were given entry into US to study. So that was very well taken care of, I would say.
Post Harvard, you actually joined Walmart Global Tech as the senior product manager. Please, like maybe now you can tell us. Actually, I'm backtracking a bit here, and I'm asking you, how did you get into Walmart, and how was the interview process? Was there something interesting that happened with you?
The interview process was pretty standard. I was looking at opportunities in the logistics industry, and Walmart happens to be one of the biggest shippers in the US. And therefore, their internal logistics operation is enormous. They have a well built out technology stack. They're also an e-commerce company, and that's where I decided to take a chance and found a fit during the interview.
So you approached them through sites and all, and then you got them interview?
Yes. So the job application process, typically for PM roles, as I've seen it, is you try and talk to people at the firm you're trying to apply to understand whether it is a fit, whether the team is operating in a way that you're used to, whether the skill sets are a match. And from there on, you try and present yourself to the recruiting manager, have those conversations, go through the interview process, and figure out an offer. In product management, in specific, your working environment is very much dependent on your team and manager. So you can have completely different experiences in two teams in the same company. So this is like one of the most important parts of applying for a PM job.
So can you just tell us how is the work-life balance at Walmart?
I think one of my learnings back from my shell job has been that I need to look at work and life as a complete whole. You can't really separate out work and life. My team in specific at Walmart works across 2 time zones. We have some team members in India as well. So you have calls in the morning, you have calls at night, you get enough time to rest. Walmart has a flex PTO policy in California, which means you can get as much time as you need to rest and relax, which works perfectly well for me because I like to keep my schedule flexible to the requirements of the project.
In the beginning of joining Harvard, you said that you chose Harvard because it had a very strong output towards VCs. So they have a
Yes.
strong network. So what happened to that VC thing? Because you came back to product management. Am I missing something like?
While conversing with different VC firms, I had a realization that the part of the process I enjoyed most at Shell was actually the product part. And I did not have this realization earlier, but while talking to one of the VPs, they told me I sounded much more excited. And I was talking about the software developments, and that got me thinking what really mattered to me during that role. And I realized that I wanted to be much more focused on implementation in the short run than looking at investments, because how can I decide a good investment if I don't know how it's supposed to be built?
To the working hours or the style of working in India or maybe Malaysia, and comparing it that to USA. As you said, you work in the beginning, like the first half of the day, and then a bit of the end. So how was that in Asian, like in Malaysia or in India, if you had to say the working hours?
It's highly dependent on the role again. In Malaysia, my job was a highly experimental job, so it came with a rider that I had to prove my use case within a year to keep my job, which meant I was pretty much working sometimes 20 hours a day. Interacting with people across different time zones kind of requires you to do that, and it was a choice. I could have chosen to work fewer hours. It wouldn't have gotten me to where I wanted to get to. I found India to be more balanced just because I was in a structured role working as part of a team with defined hours. In the US, as I mentioned earlier, there's flexibility both ways. I find the work hours work for me because you need time to think, you need time to have meetings, you need time to write your product requirements, and those are spread throughout the day for me. If you're I'd say if you're an individual looking for a clear separation of work and life in the middle of the day, maybe my particular team might not be the best fit. But if you're flexible, taking a couple hours out here and there, uh, I think it's a great fit. Uh, has a great manager and definitely great colleagues to work with.
Do you think whatever you thought of achieving in life, in your career, have you achieved it at this point?
Not at all, I would say. The goal remains to have my own business, maybe a few of them. I won't say startup. I'm saying a business with a solid cash flow. That is still something I think I would be super interested to pursue, maybe in my late 30s or my 40s, because I'm working on filling out some skill gaps I need. I think I should improve on before I'm able to manage a large number of people and lead a business.
Great. Then I think I'm done. Thank you, Anshul. Thank you for joining.